Hey everyone, this is Dean from Paranormal Pickers. Getting ready for our next Paranormal Picker adventure. Come on, join me. Well, hello and good evening, everyone. Hello, Sam. Welcome.
Hello, Dean. Hello, everybody.
How
Thanks
are
for
you
having me
today?
back again.
Oh, definitely. You're a staple here now. Is that the word?
I guess
stapled, you,
so.
stapled you to the corner, so you're stuck here now. One of those
All
staples that
right,
blend in.
co-host. We'll have to get matching hats.
Yeah,
Paranormal pickers.
there you go. So, hello everyone. We'll have people join us here in a second. But so, what have you been doing since last week? Anything exciting?
Mm. Got a lot of yard work done this weekend. But
Yeah.
then I went with Midwest Ghost Investigators, and we did a little bit of cleanup work out at Marsh Cemetery in Rockford. When the tornadoes came through back on the 31st, a lot of the trees came down and knocked over some of the tombstones, and it's still a mess up there. So we spent some time the last couple days trying to at least there's too much for us to do on our own, but we at least uncovered where the stones are, so that when the cemetery brings in the big vehicles, they at least don't run over the stones. So that's been my excitement.
Well, that's cool. That's awesome that you're volunteering that time and stuff. And it's the
Yeah, we're
Midwest
trying.
Coast. Yeah. And so it's
Hi.
you, Nino, Sarah, and the rest of the guys, or just you three?
Just the three of us. So
Those other guys need to step up, I'm thinking.
I know.
Let the girls grow up.
So I know. I mean, there's still so much work that needs to be done up there, and eventually the cemetery is going to have to do like the heavy lifting. But we got a lot of the smaller things cleared out. Like I said, at least the stones are uncovered. That way, they're not. I feel like Marsh Cemetery. It's a location where they feel forgotten, and I hate that for them. But nobody goes up there. Everybody drives by it, but nobody goes up there. And I just feel like they're always so forgotten. And then to have these trees fall on them, I'm like, oh no. So
I know an example of that too. Down in Louisville, Kentucky, there's this little cemetery with an old like crematory in the back, and these, it's bumpy, not cared for or anything. It's kind of like right in town, and it's just horrible. And then there's like this brick wall with like barbed wire on the top of it and stuff on the one side. Well, that belongs to the Cave Hill Cemetery, which is this beautiful garden cemetery. It's where Colonel Sanders is buried, Muhammad Ali is buried, and this place is phenomenal. And then right next door is like this unkept place that nobody goes to, like you just mentioned. And why wouldn't Cave Hill just kind of adopt it? It's not. It's what, an acre, an extra acre to take care of. So, but yeah, it's similar to what you're doing. So as far as the tornadoes and the wind, how bad was it out there for the museum?
Fortunately, Tinker wasn't in the path. So we got very fortunate. We didn't have any branches down or anything. Knock on wood.
And do not take that free. Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah. So we, we were very fortunate that the museum was okay.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the house, as the house was quiet and the world was calm. It's actually a poem by Warren something. I forget.
I was gonna say that line sounded familiar.
Yeah, the house was quiet and the world was calm. So we're going to kind of dive deep into the existence of the Tinker Cottage, and while the house is quiet, couldn't be more terrifying, could it? Add the music. Boom, boom, boom.
Bum, bum.
Well, think about that for a second, because you already know what family lives there. And if they're not there, and you know they're not there just by your feelings and sensitivities, and you start to experience something that could be terrifying to you, wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Has that ever happened to you before?
So it has, at the cottage. Not a lot of people realize this, but there were some live-in caretakers in the years that we weren't staffed by trained historians. And so this is like, I don't know, the 70s and the 80s, right? Because then by the early 90s, the carriage house was built, and that's where the caretaker moved to live in. But the 70s, the 80s, we had caretakers there, and at least one couple reported hearing piano music and like a party going on downstairs a couple of times. And they'd go downstairs, turn the lights on, and nobody'd be there, and it was all quiet. So they were kind of like, what just happened? And that's kind of, honestly, like the ghost stories go back to kind of the start of the museum. But
It's interesting and these are people that are alive today that were able to tell you this.
so I'm hoping they're still alive today, but I haven't personally met them. The previous administration had met with them and heard their stories, and those stories got passed on to me when I took over.
That's cool. Now, I know that, well, there is a piano in the building, and it's. Can you talk a little bit about the piano?
Sure. It's a Grand Steinway piano. It was made in Chicago in the late 1850s. Robert Tinker purchased it and brought it to the cottage after it was finished being built in 1870. So it's all the ladies of the house would play on it. They would have what was called parlor concerts. And so that's how Victorians kind of entertained each other. They would get together, play music, sing songs. Robert would join in on his violin from time to time. But all the ladies of the house would learn to play instruments to entertain their guests.
So Rob played the violin. Huh?
He did, just like his father before him.
He was a man of many talents.
Oh, absolutely.
So back in the 70s and 80s, when to hear a piano party going off downstairs, that would have been pretty phenomenal. And being in the parlor.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure.
And on the 15th. So we just celebrated Easter. Would they also celebrate Easter there in the Victorian mansion?
They would. The Victorians, actually, Easter, the big celebration we know it as today, kind of started off in the Victorian era. And so they would send greeting cards. They would have family dinners, very similar to what we do today.
Okay, cool. So Ron says hi. Laura says hi.
Hi, guys.
I don't know who else is out there, but glad you could join in on this Tuesday night. Beautiful day, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
And so back to the piano. Have you heard any strikes of McKee's there before?
I haven't. We as staff members don't even play on it. We don't mess with it. I'm so tempted every time I'm dusting it. It's just a little thing. I don't. But we had a previous curator who she decided she was going to see how in tune it was and to see what condition it was. And so she played a few notes on it. And she said she had felt this overwhelming sense of like doom, as if everybody had gathered around her to yell at her. And she's like, listen, if you want me to keep things in order, I got to test it out. And she said it kind of felt like they backed off a little bit, but they were all very, what are you doing?
That's, yeah. Or they were gathering around because maybe they were thinking hey, we get to play again. We get to party again.
Yeah, maybe it's time to sing songs together.
So even though we don't say that we can use the piano, can we actually use the piano? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, unfortunately.
Then
I would love to. I would love to.
we could probably. I think we actually did that one time. We downloaded some or played a YouTube piano and see if that would strike something. But you never know what's going to happen. But I think it's a digital
Yeah,
version of the piano, maybe different than the actual piano itself.
yeah. We actually had one lady who had some psychic tendencies say that they were all gathered in the parlor and they were wanting to sing together and to enjoy the company that had come because it was an investigation night. And so the small group of us gathered in the parlor, and she had this incredible singing voice, and she voice or something like that, where it was an older hymnal that they would have known. And I'll tell you what, the entire energy in the room just like electrified. It felt like they were so excited to get together and sing and listen to music. And it was a really interesting experience. Even those who had they claimed they had no inkling of psychic abilities, they all said that they could feel the energy shift in the room.
Interesting. Now, you bring up psychics, so we can jump into that realm. Now, I know that we're still talking about what scares the Tinkers away. What actually keeps the Tinkers away, and I'm curious to see if the psychics, mediums, the uh, you know, pick up on anything if they walk in there and say, I'm not sensing any Tinkers. However, I'm picking up on something else. I know back in November of 2018, we had Jen come out, and that I believe that's the day the dolls moved. I'm almost for
It
certain
very
that.
well could be.
Yeah, I think that was the day. Um, and she mentioned that the spirits are not shy anymore. So I don't know if she's referring to the Tinkers or this something else. Um, and they mentioned Maddie is there, and I believe there
Mm-hmm.
is a Maddie there, right? I believe
There is.
we touched on that. Um, she also said a spirit is tortured, like a metal band around its chest in a way. She sensed that Robert was sitting in a chair. There was a lady in the root cellar, probably the one that says get out now." Uh, and there was a clip that I caught, or I mentioned when we were there, where I laughed, and it sounded like an echo of my laugh, and you
Mm-hmm.
you thought it was the floorboards, which it could be, and it just sounded just like my laugh. When I play it, it's still you can still hear it. Um, and then also an attachment to the baby buggy. Now, there's also is there a post mortem picture in that house in the baby buggy?
There is we do have a few postmortem photos and one postmortem portrait in our collection. None of them are in the baby buggy, but with the portrait of John Manny that's hanging up on the second floor of the library is actually a postmortem portrait that was painted right
Oh,
after his passing. And then during the month of October, we have two photos of women that were close to the family that we have postmortem photos.
very cool. So yeah, I thought there was something with the postmortem photo in the buggy during that time, but you may have moved it. I don't know. Um, she said, or someone saw a head pop up in the carriage house. I don't know if that was me or not, but there was a head that popped up. Um,
So the thing about our carriage house, it is not the original building.
yeah.
The original building had come down years ago, but it was rebuilt in the early 90s. And initially, that's where the caretaker moved into upstairs, and then downstairs was our gift shop and our offices. Nowadays, it's our conference room for when we have volunteer meetings or board meetings, and then upstairs is the office space. But even though it wasn't, it's in this roughly the same location that the Tinkers had one, but not the exact location. But the Tinkers still come over and they still appear from time to time. I can't tell you the amount of times I'm in my office and I hear footsteps coming up the stairs and I think, oh, it must be my coworker Stephanie. And then I call out and the footsteps stop and nobody says anything. And I peek around the corner and no one else is in the building.
Wow.
Or, we've had people, I actually recently had one guy send me a message. He said, "Hey, were you working really late the other night? I was doing a delivery, food delivery, and I was waiting for the order to get ready. So I thought I'd come sit in the parking lot and play on my phone until the order was ready. And I looked up in your office window and it looked like there was a woman still in there working. And I thought it was awfully late for you to be working downtown at night like that." And I said, "Well, that wasn't me." So, it's the carriage house can get interesting as well, even though, it's not the original building.
Well, you spend the most time there, so you would know. She also said that someone was killed with a rock.
So we don't have any records of that. So I don't know if that predates the Tinkers on the land. We do have a Native American burial mound. I don't know if it has if it was related to that. I don't know if it's related to an accident that took place near the machinery buildings that are nearby. I don't know if it was somebody who was just passing through, but in our records, we don't have anything indicating that. Same thing with the one that you said, there was a spirit that was kind of with a chain around them.
Metal band around chest, yeah.
That was the only time something like that has come through. So none of the other psychics have picked it up. It may have been somebody just passing through.
Gotcha. We had ghost box hits that night too. Saw, girl, door, where, night, outside, which was kind of interesting because I know there's a girl there. Mm-hmm. So whoever was speaking, they saw a girl by the door, wear night, maybe nightgown, who knows, outside.
Do you think it was by the door or a door girl, Dorr? Because Mary's maiden name was Dorr. Hannah's last name, Marcia, Jessie, they were all Dorr women.
Very good point. It could be Dorr, Dorr. So saw girl, door, wear night, outside. Interesting. There you go. The ghost box said creepy. And then I asked if it missed Steve, and it did say Steve. I don't know if you could hear it on here or not.
Well, let's find out.
Let's see here.
Do you remember Steve? Steve?
Did you hear that?
I could hear it faintly. Yeah.
Let me play it again here.
Do you remember Steve? Steve?
Yeah, it's really faint. But it said Steve. It sounded like Steve anyway. So it misses Steve. Well, back in 2018. It did.
I'm sure they do a little bit. I know. We all miss Steve still.
Oh, yeah. Well, he came back. Did he stop by at all?
I think he stops by, but it's always one close, and so I haven't had the chance to run into him. He said he tends to stop by when I'm not there. So, but I'm sure if he does stop by, the Tinkers notice.
Oh yeah. and I believe we got a response where we asked them where they spent Christmas, and it came through as Europe, like he spent Christmas in Europe.
Sound like a bad place to spend Christmas.
I don't know. So again, what scares the Tinkers away? Like, what would keep the Tinkers away? Um, I know that. Well, how many paranormal groups have been in this building investigating? You do paranormal events, and you have psychics. You have, everyone who knows what their intentions are. Uh, I don't think we've used. Actually, we have used the Ouija board in the Red Room.
Well, that was before my
Way,
time.
way before your time, and it was Mark and George that did so. So, having said that, is the potential of something being able to scare the Tinkers away could be the results of what something we might be doing. Have you
I think the
experienced?
potential is there, but I will say that they tend to come through and talk with groups that are a little bit more easygoing and not so scientific based. Now, of course, we want to have scientific investigations, but the groups that are very strict about how they're gonna, from this time to this time, it's this, that. Whereas, like with your group, it's very, we're all just going to sit around, we're going to chit chat, have a nice little conversation, see if anything comes through. They tend to work with groups like that a lot more than the ones that are like, it's super scientific. And there's got to be no chance for outside influence. And,
It's impossible.
right. But they like people who are more laid back and not so focused on just scientific research. I can kind of understand that, from my point of view, they're probably like, I'm not a scientific researcher, I'm a person. Talk to me like a person and treat me like one. Not that these scientific groups are bad, because we need them, right? We need groups that are going to be extremely science focused. That's how you end up trying to prove or disprove whatever, right? You got to go back to the science basics. But the groups that are a little bit more laid back and willing to have fun with each other, the Tinkers like that a lot more than the groups that are very, there's tension in the group.
So would that mean the Tinkers actually say they're actually leaving their house, or would they try to get those people out of the house? They just leave. They say, you know what, we're not gonna stay here for this.
So what my experience with them has been is they don't necessarily leave the house, but they're like, we're just gonna get very quiet and we're gonna go into this room where they're not at, and we'll go enjoy ourselves. I will say there was one group.
When the house is quiet.
Yeah, when the house is quiet, the Tinkers they're probably around. They have gone out and about, I will say. But they a lot of times they're around the house. They just may be a little quiet for the day.
I wonder if they have like ghost earplugs where they don't have to hear us.
They're probably begging for some sort of technology like that on their side, considering, whenever I'm cleaning the house, I'm singing off key and they're like, oh my God, here she goes again.
You got the vacuum and the duster, is that?
Yeah.
Well, so back to like the Ouija board stuff. Now, I don't use it, but you got to keep it in mind. I don't think there's. Well, you're familiar with the Ouija board, and I know that you and Sarah have had discussions before about the Ouija board, and you're familiar with the term Zozo, correct? Zozo is
Not
one of those.
super familiar, but very basic understanding.
Well, Zozo is a demon that is in some way connected to the board game. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of times where people, it would just go back from Z-O-Z-O-Z-O and spells out Zozo. So one of the things that I do, which is a reverse, I do a lot of reverse stuff
Mhm.
because there is a reverse language, backward masking, stuff like that. It's a pseudoscience, so you will. It's not like a scientists don't recognize it as a science, but there
Sure.
is a couple people out there that pay attention to it, and I think there's something to this. Now, if Zozo is a demon connected to the board game, so what I did was I reversed it. So I reversed Zozo. So I have this app called Reverse Talk, and I'll demonstrate it now. Zozo,
Dodo.
right? Now I hit a button and it reverses it.
Forward. Forward.
So Zozo, and okay, now I'll demonstrate that again. Was.
Was.
Now I'm going to reverse that.
No.
So Zozo reversed is was.
Hmm.
Now was is a or in Islam was is a term that refers to Satan whispering.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Satan whispering a message of doubt and temptation. So when they say was, or I don't know if it's that's how it's pronounced, but that's how it's written. WAS
Hmm.
was. So to have Zozo being a demon connected to the board, and was being a term that refers to Satan whispering in reverse, it kind of makes you open up your mind a little bit further about the actual board and what it's trying to tell you.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So there's an extra tool out there now that the Ouija board folks probably didn't know about. So there you go. You heard it first here on Paranormal Pictures, Ghost Head Soup. This is what we do. So yeah, you go on YouTube, and I've had it up there for I don't know a couple of years now on YouTube. It's got like 160 something views only. But yeah, go out there, check it out, and try to see what you can come up with as far as that's concerned. So Ghost Head Soup, YouTube, Zozo was, and enjoy experimenting and protect yourself. Just like our guest last week, Becky Vickers, said,
Yeah.
you know. So speaking of good net positive people, we'd like to thank Becky Vickers for coming on last week, and then also, yeah, we can't wait to get her up here at the Tinker, and I'm sure they'll talk to her. You know,
Oh, I'm sure.
she got a floating accent, they'll say, right? So yeah, back to the was. So again, that could, we've had so much stuff happen at the Tinker Swiss, but then there's days when we don't have anything.
Hmm.
And then if certain people are there, sometimes they like certain people, sometimes they don't. But I know when Tim and I went there, it felt so warm and welcoming,
Hmm.
and then other times it doesn't, maybe because we've added a different element to the soup or different recipe or different ingredient to the soup and see, something changes, and maybe they don't like that part of the soup. No, I
Okay.
don't want that ingredient in my soup. Thank you very much. It's hard to say, but it's hard, you know, different strokes
That
for different,
that
different
must be
strokes
when
for
you're
different
smart.
folks. No, and well, Yeah, they bother Mark, and they bother Mark at the lodge too. So I mean, at the lab. So he's very abrasive at times. You know, and they want him out, and that's he was down there when it says get out now.
I mean,
Just saying.
I mean, like they pick and choose their people. I can't control them, but
I bring up Mark only because to let you know that he was supposed to come out on the 15th, but he's not going to make it.
oh, lame.
Yep. So everyone, boo Mark. Boo.
We'll
Mark a
catch you
dick.
next time.
But I believe we have Amber and Tim and maybe Amanda coming out, so we'll have some good folks there.
Great, great.
The
There's
ones the
still
spirits
tickets
like.
left.
Oh, there you go, folks. So what do you think about the was Zozo? I mean, do you find it based off what you and Sarah have talked about or researched?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I think it's like any dowsing tool, like or communication tool. If you don't know what you're doing, I think it's very easy to open up doors that you didn't mean to. My own personal thoughts on it. Some people say, it's so easy, anybody can do it. I don't know that that's true. I think I personally don't use it. I probably never will. It makes me very uncomfortable. So we don't bring them onto the property at Tinker anymore. Now, I will say, some people have really good luck with it. But I hear a lot more horror stories than positive stories come from it. And anytime, anything, whether it's a Ouija board or, some other device gets so many negative, it makes me pause and go, well, maybe it's just something that shouldn't be messed
Right.
with. But again, there's people out there who love it, who it works great for, and they understand how to make it work and work for a positive outcome. That's just not been the stories that I've heard. So I don't know. I think it's very easy for anybody or anything to come through. And so it's interesting that Zozo and was is reversed. Because then you've got a whole nother culture. It's not just, the Americans and their game boards, right? You're talking a whole nother culture and another language that has this meaning. And it's coming through into the English and the American side of it as well. And that makes me do a second pause and go, I don't know. When we're crossing, continents and language barriers and all these things, and everybody's having these same dialects, if you will. I don't know about that.
Yeah, like you said, it's another door that opens, and to your point, it sounds like it depends on who's driving.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on who's driving. Pretty simple. I mean, you can have one person that is got a good outlook, positive, use a pendulum, uses dowsing rods, uses so many different tools, including the Ouija board, and they always have a good positive outlook on things. Tarot cards, or even just anything. And if you have somebody that's not good at driving these tools and they just want to focus on the dark negative side, that's what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on who the driver is. Yeah, makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. And that's why you gotta, for someone like us in the field, someone like myself, is I don't use the Ouija board because I don't trust it. I don't trust me coming up with the right words, and I think it would be more of a a lack of time to investigate it because I just know what I'm capable of with my pendulum use and my dowsing rod use, and I know that I can keep it from moving,
Yeah.
And when there's those times where I do have the dowsing rods move, then I have to take notice of it, and
Mhm.
that's when you focus on stuff. Especially like I use the Ghost Box and the Obelisk 3. Those are the tools that I know because I use those the most. So that's what
Sure.
I'm comfortable with, and that's what I could say, hey, this thing's not acting right.
Mhm.
Let's focus in and potentially have something happen. I'm not in there taking base readings with EMF because I already know that's there, what it's gonna do, what encourages it,
Mhm.
and people see things constantly during the day, during the night. So it's just like, I have to go in there like I'm one of them, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So, so what about the sock monkey? You think the sock monkey factory scares the tinkers away? Oh, let me bring on this little thing here.
I don't know if it scares them away as much as it just annoys them a little bit, maybe. But
Yeah, look at that. You got a sign out there with the sock monkey.
we do. The sock monkey was started off right here in Rockford, Illinois, at the Nelson Knitting Factory, which is the building right next door to the cottage. It sits on the land that used to be the Tinker's driveway,
That's it right
in the
there.
Tinker Gardens, and so that's the corner of the building there. It's huge. It is so expansive. It is currently condemned. The EPA just spent 6 weeks in there cleaning out the asbestos.
Oh, they
Um,
did.
they did, but it is still condemned. There's no flooring, there's no pipes, there's no anything. There's bricks falling off the side of the building. It's just
I know what's there. The stock monkey ghosts.
the ghosts of socks past.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
so that used to be a driveway there then. Now did they have the property all the way down to where what is it, Kent Street now is? Or?
yep. So it was basically to the corner of Kent and South Main. Not quite to the corner, but just shy of the corner of Kent and South Main. So it went all the way to Kent Street. It went all the way to Winnebago Street. And he had originally 27 acres.
Wow.
And now it sits on about 5.5 acres.
Now did that include this here? This Manny Mansion? So I did find this.
So this is actually not the Manny Mansion you're thinking of.
Oh.
This here is John Pell's Manny, who was the cousin of John H. Manny. John H. Manny was our Manny. John
Okay.
P. is his cousin. So this is actually the Manny Mansion. This one is still in existence. It was purchased by John Pell's, not built by him. John Pell's Manny. And it is now the Burpee Museum of Natural History. But so John H., which is our guy, and John P., which is that guy, they were cousins, and they worked together on the Manny Reaper initially. And then he went on to develop and create other inventions. Like there was like a lemon thing that you would push onto the lemons and it squeezes out the lemonade. Not that my hand gestures are healthy at all, but so
the lemon juice.
Yeah. So he made a whole bunch of different things over the years. And it is supposedly haunted as well by the Manny family. But John P. was the cousin of John H. And John H. was our Mary's first husband, the one who invented the Reaper.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So no sock monkeys at that mansion.
Not that we're aware of.
Could you imagine? You remember the movie Trilogy of Terror, right?
I am not familiar with it. No, I'm sorry.
A moment of silence, please.
Hey, hang my head in
Could you imagine like an army of sock monkeys coming across the
mm, I'll
coming
pass
across
on
the coast? Yeah. That's great. I'll go back to him in a second. uh, so yeah, again, what scares the takers away? I think an army of sock monkeys would do that.
that.
Now, you had mentioned that, or we were talking before about, I believe offline, about him bringing back stuff from overseas that could
Mhm.
potentially have, back in the day, what was it, the Omen or or what is it called, the Exorcist? They bring back these tokens of something and they carry these evil spirits and stuff inside it. So Tinker, having been part of these tours across Egypt and stuff like that, do you think he had brought something back that may have attached it? You were mentioning something about bayonets.
Yeah, so we actually the next exhibits, so this spring, this fall, next spring, next it's a whole series called The Traveling Tinkers.
Oh,
So this spring at the end of April, I believe it's the 25th, that last Tuesday in April, is opening up the Traveling Tinkers Hawaiian Expeditions.
oh
Um,
nice.
and then this fall is going to be Westward Expansion. And then next spring is going to be the European Vacation, 1862. And then the one after that is, I believe, heading east, talking about the East Coast and where he grew up in New York. And so, but that being said, Robert was very well traveled and he would pick up souvenirs from everywhere he visited, or at least would try to pick up souvenirs from where he visited. Now, I don't know that he actually got any artifacts when he visited Egypt, but we have artifacts that he purchased from a Navajo reservation. We've got artifacts from the Hawaiian Islands. We've got things. We do have some artifacts from Europe, quite a few actually. But I don't know if he did bring anything back and they just kind of eventually dissipated, or if they're still hanging around, they've just been silenced, or what. We do have, I was telling you, we have a couple of bayonets, and now we don't know for certain. The family story goes, one of the members was out in Gettysburg shortly after the battle, and as they were walking through the fields, they found a couple of bayonets, the tips, right? Not the whole rifle itself,
Yeah,
just those metal
bayonet.
spear
Yeah.
bayonet tips. And so we have a couple of them, and they're sitting on the shelf up on the second floor of the library. I don't know if they were used to spear anybody or not. We've never really asked either. So, um, but that's where the family story is. We don't have any definitive anything saying, yes, I was there and I picked up these things from Gettysburg.
Well, we know Robert wasn't there.
Right. Robert wasn't there.
We know
So
Robert did not fight in Gettysburg because his wife
who wasn't
paid.
here just yet. His
Oh,
lady friend.
okay. His lady friend paid for him, or paid for him to go overseas.
Yep.
And did someone take his place?
So Mary paid for Robert to take a tour of Europe for 9 months. And this is something that all up and coming wealthy men would do, right? It was part of your education. Well, Robert came from a poor missionary family. He didn't have that chance, but he was climbing the ranks here in Rockford and moving up in the company fairly quickly. And so Mary wanted to make sure he got his education. And it just so happened she was also protecting him during the war. Now, he did come back conveniently shortly after the Union passed the ruling that you could pay for somebody to take your place. So we do know that Robert paid, I believe it was $300 for a gentleman here in town to take his place. We know that the man survived through the war and he did return But shortly after returning to Rockford, he ended up moving out to Iowa, which is where he spent the rest of his life.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good that the gentleman made it safe. Because
I know. It's like, whoo.
I can tell you who the was whispering in our ears. If that did not happen,
Right.
it would have been the curse on Robert.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of curses, I want to bring up this gentleman, and I want to get your insight. So we know this gentleman as
Theodore Tinker.
Theodore Tinker. So now this guy's story intrigues me a little bit because it's almost like, well, I'll tell you about what happens to Tinker or Theodore. So he was born in Freeport, Illinois, June 15th, 1908. Now, during this time, there was also like this huge um, New York orphanage train coming out here to Freeport, where they had like all these kids being orphanaged off to people. It's called
Being orphanaged off to people.
orphanaged off.
Not
Well,
adopted, orphanaged off.
orphanaged off, adopted. Yeah. Well, he wasn't part of the train. He actually was born in Freeport to a minister's daughter and a race car driver.
Yep, they were married. They had a proper
Yeah.
family little setup there.
And as you know, I do everything reverse. So race car spelled backwards is race car.
It is. Palindrome.
And as bad luck would have it, his biological father dies in a car accident while racing one of his cars right before this Ted Theodore's birth in 1908. So his dad, he never meets his real dad. And then his mother, a minister's daughter, gives young Theodore away 10 weeks old to the orphanage in Freeport. And then I guess a fire broke out in the orphanage, resulted in the children being sent to another orphanage in Normal, Illinois. And that's actually, or it was called the Baby Fold. And that's where Jesse Tinker actually acquired or adopted, orphanaged young Theodore at 10 weeks old.
Yes.
And now, so I find it interesting that the race car driver and the minister's daughter, that part I didn't realize until just recently.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that was kind of intriguing because going on with this gentleman's life, at the age of 18, he marries his first wife, Gertrude, in Iowa, because you mentioned Iowa. And they had a daughter named Rosemary Jessie Tinker.
Yes.
Now, she was born August 25th of 1929, which is ironic because Jesse adopted him August 22nd in 1908. So kind of like the same time frame. So they actually lived a few years in Des Moines, Iowa, ended up moving to Milwaukee in like the 1930s. And then, but Teddy and Gertrude divorced in 1945. So here's where it gets kind of like this whole curse thing or something. Because Gertrude and Rosemary moved to Arizona, and unfortunately, not long after she moved to Arizona, she was killed by a car accident. She was involved in a car accident and got killed.
Gertrude was. Yes.
Gertrude was. And a year later, Rosemary, hold on, it says also died in a car accident.
Nope. We've got new information.
It said also on the same highway. So that's a myth.
So this actually we found this out. I was doing some research last summer, and Rosemary did not die in Arizona. Rosemary went on to live quite a while after her mother passed away. So she ended up married to a man, and she, by 1950, had a 2-year-old son named Edward. Oh. Now that the 1950 census came out, right? And so we were able to find her. So she had this boy in 1948. So when I went back and found her marriage certificate, I want to say she got married in 47, baby in 48, and then in 1950, the census listed her as single with the baby. So and that they were separated. So
wow.
she separated from her first husband and had the baby. They were still in Arizona. But then I couldn't find almost any trace of her or her son. I found articles of her first husband, but I couldn't find anything else of her and her son. And so I winded my search and I found her. She had remarried out in Arkansas. Now, this is years later. I want to say we're in the 1960s, 1970s at this point,
Okay.
right? And so she's in her 40s, I believe it was, and she does die in a car accident.
Oh my
But-
gosh.
Right. So it's still the car accident. It's just not a year later at the same highway.
On the
So-
same highway, yes.
Yeah, so it's not. She was in Arkansas, and that's actually where she's buried. But I couldn't find any record of Edward at that point. So I don't know if he didn't survive childhood. I don't know if he ended up with his biological father. I don't know what happened to him. I can't find him yet. But theoretically, he could very well still be alive and living his best life. You know, he born in 1948. He'd only be in his 70s at this point. So
So that's how, I mean, this stuff, that's how urban legends get started. She died in a car accident a year later. So of course, and now we have actual proof now from the 1950 census, you know, which my mom is on there, my dad's on there. So I found my parents on there.
fun.
Yeah. So that was cool. And yeah, it was okay. So that's good information. And it's good to know that Rosemary didn't die. Well, she died by car accident.
I mean,
later.
she didn't get to live that full long life. You know, 40s is still very early to have
yeah,
passed.
but they're saying a year. They're saying a year after her mom died.
Right. And so she at least got, you know, she was married a couple times. She had at least one child. You know, Teddy, the sad part is Teddy would have still been alive when his daughter passed. So, you know, whether it was a year after they moved or later on, either way, he still outlived his daughter. And that is kind of heartbreaking to realize.
Well, back to Ted is that he remarried to Lois Jensen and became a father figure to her daughter.
He did.
And then he was in the trucking company and railroads. He worked for that stuff. Last known living in Alice, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the other part is that on May 26, 1984, hold on. I had some glitches there. What happened?
I don't know.
So Theodore died in a car accident too?
He did.
Oh my
Another
God.
car accident. It's just, it's wild. It's
Does it
wild.
also from the biological father's spirit who died before to see his kid? Do you think the race car driver spirit followed this family the whole time?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't think so. You know, I mean, if anything, you would think that he would try to prevent it from happening rather than causing it. But yeah, I mean, it is a weird coincidence.
All car accidents. That's why I wanted to bring it up today, because it's like, you know, when something like that happens, everything is quiet and the world is thinking or something. I don't know. But yeah. So
Well,
he
it
was
makes you
75.
wonder.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder going back in their timeline. I haven't looked at the family tree on that end, but you know, is it possible that his grandparents had perished in a carriage accident? Or, you know, how far back does this go? Did it start with dad?
Yeah, because we don't know what happened. Do you know what happened to the minister's daughter? Do we even have that information?
Yes. So she put Teddy up for adoption so that she would be eligible to remarry easier,
Okay.
because it would have been more difficult for a single woman who already had a child to remarry again. This way, if she doesn't have any, dependents, then when she does get remarried, it's only herself that her future husband has to worry about
Oh,
caring for.
times changed.
Yeah. And so she went on to, live her life. Teddy did meet his maternal biological grandparents, but from what my understanding is, he refused to meet with his biological mother. He didn't want to have anything to do with her. Jessie was his mother. Robert and Jessie were his parents.
Well, he
And
was 10 weeks old. Why would he have any animosity?
I don't know if it was. I know he had struggled because all of his friends' parents were younger. Jessie adopted him when she was 50, and Robert was almost 72.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure, and they were of the Victorian era, whereas in the early 1900s, childhood was really taken off, and kids weren't really doing as many chores or working the hours that they used to have to work. Whereas having parents from the Victorian era, that's a whole different world.
Well, he did chores, didn't he? He did chores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did. Oh, he did a lot of chores. That was part of the problem, is he had too many chores, and all of his other friends got to be kids and do kid things. But I don't know. I mean, he loved the Tinkers as his parents, and they did. Robert unfortunately passed away when Teddy was only 16. So, how much time do you get with them when it's that point?
Exactly. Well, back to that orphanage train or orphan train, that's what happened too. Just as you described, is a lot of these kids were adopted into good families and lived life like Theodore, but others were adopted into farm properties where they were just basically farmhands, slaves, and through that whole process. And if you get online, if you're interested in researching that, it's orphanage train. I believe it was early 1900s, and there's research on it. But I just found it real close to Teddy as being the Freeport connection with the orphan train, and I was thinking, well, maybe was he part of that? So that got me looking more into his life. And then I started seeing all these race car accident things. I was like, what the hell's going on here, man? How did I miss this over the last 10 years?
There's just so many things. There's only so much you keep here anyways, right?
Right. Who needs a life when we have the Tinkers to follow?
Exactly.
Vicariously through, Oh, man. So we got a couple minutes here. I know we got a couple more shows here. We're going to talk more later about some of our experiences. Maybe we can bring Laura on one of these times, and she can talk about her Valentine's Day episode at the Tinker. And then that was fun. Yeah, maybe Laura, let me know when when you can be on a Tuesday night. Talk about that and your experiences, and also death, more death, and more death, I guess. Something right up her alley, right? So death do us part. We'll talk about some weddings that took place, and then also death by sea. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. And we'll bring up some more interesting tidbits about the Tinkers. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Samantha, thanks again for sharing this evening with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dean. I always enjoy it.
And then don't forget, there's extra tickets for April 15th out there for the paranormal investigation with this group called Ghost Head Soup, I believe. Also, we have on May 13th, another investigation with Haunted Rockford and Henson and Bartell. Awesome guys. Don't want to miss them. Um, Paranormal Access, again, April 29th is coming up, and May 5th, May 6th. And you got the Kling Brothers in July 28th, 29th. Just go on to the Tinker Cottage webpage, get all that information, and get your tickets early because they'll probably sell out quick if they haven't already.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it already, Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters episode Fear Factory, Season 8, Episode 20. It's the second part of 2. I got that down pretty good now.
Yeah, you're on a roll.
And also look for our YouTube page. Check out the Zozo Was clip and then all of our other stuff. We're adding on some new midnight screams for you with one of our very own Samantha did an audio for one. So look for that one coming soon. I got to piece it together and make magic happen on the video part of it. So looking forward to that. And we'll never look at you the same, Samantha.
It's not my story. Let's just be clear.
It
Read
is
it.
Georgia's story. Yeah, it is Georgia's story. It's called Heat, and Samantha supplies her vocals, and it should be pretty fun to watch. So and listen to, of course. So and then back to the Kling brothers. They're going to be at the Tinker Veterans Memorial Hall and stuff of that nature too. So keep in mind Haunted Rockford as well, our and Midwest Ghost Society.
Those
Ghost
investigators.
Hunters, investigators. One of those terms.
Yeah.
And have you heard from Sarah? Is Sarah back in town?
She
yeah,
is. Oh my gosh. This poor woman got put through the ringer through Ireland, and her luggage got misplaced, and so she's back stateside. Her luggage finally arrived 3 weeks later.
Oh my God.
And so,
Well, maybe she can join us next week too.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Maybe we'll have Sarah on next week and then Laura for the following week.
Yeah, why not?
I'll reach out to them and see what we can do. So, all right, folks, good night, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Oh, hey. Wow. Oh, hey everyone, it's Dean from Paranormal Pickers. Oh, I got the preview for the next episode. Oh, yeah. Here, take a peek. Oh.
This place is haunted.